From the land of swimming pools and movie stars. And just two laughs and a heart on.
Come here, Daddy. Oh, you look so good.
I meant the other direction. Harrison's Hangout. Harrison on the highway.
That's right. The highway today is Hollywood, coming to you from Marilyn Monroe's former apartment. And having been in Provincetown, Massachusetts, on the tip of Cape Cod, the tip of the glands of Cape Cod, about a year ago, they had a week-long cross-dressers convention. Now, many of us, especially if we're named Mildred and live in the middle of Ohio, assume that a cross-dresser, well, we don't know what to assume. But the fact is, these tend to be straight, heterosexual, married men who put on dresses and get to be with their comrades for about a week and luxuriate in the soft folds of a petticoat. And there has been some research done, and there are some actual experts out there who can bring some light and enlightenment to this. And as we like to say, or as at least is being said, at long last, valuable and emotionally intimate social commentary on the taboo subculture of cross-dressing is finally revealed in the pages of a new book called The Cross-Dresser's Wife, Our Secret Lives. And it's called from the nonprofit website crossdresserswives.com by authors Dee Levy, the website's founder, and B. Sheffield Hunt, an international collection of stories and exposés, and it's for the first time ever the shocking secret lives of cross-dressers' wives or partners who silently grapple with the issue of transvestitism in their marriage or relationship or dating or just over dinner. It's the duo's first literary collaboration. I want to welcome you both, and thank you for putting this out there because it has been around since Geoffrey Chaucer wrote The Miller's Tale. Hello. They're gone.
They just dropped off.
Fuck. So, Yvonne, cross-dressing. What does it mean to you?
What it means to me is a straight male who likes to wear women's clothing and have a good time with this gal.
Well, why would a straight man want to put on women's clothes, assuming the straight guy is not gay? And you know what I mean? Does it seem odd to you?
I can tell you why.
No, it doesn't seem odd to me.
RuPaul's Drag Race.
It doesn't seem odd to me because people have all sorts of fetishes, from feet to spanking to whatever it is.
Okay, let's take a look at fetishes then for a second.
Alrighty.
I'm not going to ask you to reveal one yourself, but let's just go into the spanking realm.
Yeah.
Okay? Now, I'm the kind of guy who I like nicety, warmth, and softness. I think kissing and holding hands is great. Don't beat the shit out of me on a date.
Right.
Don't. If I want that, I'll go to the office. So what do you suppose that's about?
Daddy issues? I want to be punished, please. I've been a very bad girl.
Well, I guess we're going to get onto that. It's probably a little Wi-Fi connection with our guests, and when they reappear...
Can you see us?
We don't see you at all.
Oh, I see.
I don't know why. Everything just froze on us.
Where are you in the world? What state?
California.
California, La La Land. La La Land.
Oh, hell, you're neighbors.
Yes.
I can see the video. You can't see the video, Harrison?
I don't see their video at all, but if you can see it, Yvonne, you see it?
Yes.
Well, great. Then I'm just going to imagine the sparkle and twinkle of your visages.
It's there, Harrison. It's so there.
I vote yes. And after that long and girthy introduction, for whom nobody could have anything but approbation and worship, I will reset the stage. You have a new book called The Cross-Dresser's Wives. Wait a minute. There we are, The Cross-Dresser's Wife. And I had introduced you, and this is a phenomenon that's been around, as I said, as long as Geoffrey Chaucer. It goes back hundreds of years. Billy Shakespeare himself had the actors, who were all male, wear allegedly merkins, which were pudendal wigs to cover their proboscises in their crotches to make them look female. Cross-dressing's gone on forever, but it's actually a real issue in marriages. It's not a stagecraft, it's real life, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. I think there are so many myths in our society about cross-dressers, and that one of the main points that my stellar co-writer and editor and illustrator.
How do you really feel about him?
I love him. I love him. But it is definitely an issue that is a taboo issue, and that there really are so many myths that need to be busted about cross-dressers. And that's one of the main reasons why we wrote this book.
Well, let's talk about some of those myths. You'll see in one of the boxes Yvonne, and while you guys were off having a massage or an ice cream cone, well, she said, well, you know, there are many fetishes. Fetishes. Fetish may or may not be the right word here, and we were just about to get into the spanking one, and then you guys popped back in, thankfully, to rescue me from having to try to figure that one out alone with really... But let's get back to cross-dressing. Is it a fetish?
I wouldn't think so. Coming from a POV where I had no idea what cross-dressing encompassed, I just assumed that it meant her husband was gay. And, you know, when I started doing research and figuring out that this is a compulsion that develops early in their childhood, that's what made it, you brought him up earlier, it gave it almost like a Shakespearean quality, where these heroes are fighting against who they are. I mean, because if they face exposure, they feel that perhaps everything in their life would just crumble away and they'd lose everything. So, I mean, what would compel a man to put everything at risk? You know, it had to be something real, something intrinsic, something about him that he cannot deny and should not have to deny or feel any shame about.
Let me ask you a question, B. Sheffield Hunt. Do you go by B. Sheffield? Or do you like B or just Sheffield?
Feel free to call me Brian.
Brian, simple question. You, as far as I know, are like me. You are enchanted. So you have a special set of optics as far as cross-dressing. We in our culture have drag queens and the rest, and it's kind of a costume party, and it's fun and good for a few yucks. But this is serious stuff. These are people who go to, say, the northern tip of Cape Cod to P-Town every year for a week without the wives, where they can put on the stockings, the handbags, and the petticoats and mince up and down Commercial Street, and they mean it, and they're not gay men.
Exactly. And let me tell you something. Here's the other point. Their wives probably don't even know they're there. I'm laughing because I have a nervous laughter, but in reality, the majority of wives, when they marry a cross-dresser, they have no idea, because the cross-dresser, as a norm, does not disclose his condition until he's well into the marriage or he gets caught. And they do get caught. It might take a year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. Some women find out at 35 years, but they do get caught.
Let's talk about what happens there. We're talking to Dee Levy and Brian Sheffield Hunt. They are the authors of The Crossdresser's Wife, singular. And the website is crossdresserswives.com, crossdresserswives.com. You can see the graphic right there. And The Crossdresser's Wife, Our Secret Lives. What's the payoff? I think ultimately when we reverse engineer, when we get down to the source of an issue, whether it's a fetish or just enjoyment of a particular piece of music, there's a payoff at the end of it. These are typically straight guys. Why would a straight guy want to put on a bra when, if you pick 10 straight guys off the sidewalk, they would probably recoil in horror from the notion of parading around that way? Yet these fellows are drawn to it specifically.
Can I go?
Go ahead. I'll throw this one to my partner.
We've been very fortunate to be able to make establish relationships with cross-dressing men. And a lot of the information that they reveal to us, which isn't easy to elicit, it takes time to like establish trust and camaraderie there, but they get a deep sense of relief, and it's like a stress reliever for them. It's
almost
like
a drug.
Yeah, some people pour a glass of wine. It's like for some reason the feel of silk, that tactile sensation, brings something in their inner chemistry and makes them feel better.
For example, my ex-husband, the moment he would put on lingerie, he was another person altogether. And what pleasured him so much, he said the moment he felt the silk against, it had to be on him, not on me. It had to be on him. And once he had that feeling, there wasn't much else that he didn't need me to get excited. He needed the clothes.
And how can he be expected to really explain that so that someone else can understand? It'd be like trying to explain to someone why I grew up gay in Texas and, was forced to feel like the way I was not cool my whole life until, I went to larger cities and met more enlightened people.
You're not saying that the people of Texas are unenlightened.
I would never say that. Just talk to Rick Perry.
I was going to say, talk to Bush, any one of them, except for
yeah. So here's an interesting question, and it's speculation on my part, but it seems to me that there's a psychosexual payoff. Yes, it's a drug, but maybe the intensity of the desire of a woman's body is to, in a sense, cloak yourself in as close as you can to a woman's body, her underpants, to imagine that her vagina has rubbed against the bottom of these underpants, which are now on me. Therefore, I'm rubbing as a proxy against that. The bra holds a set of breasts, plump, beautiful breasts, and now I'm wearing the bra where breasts once sat. So in a way, it's a proxy set of breasts. Do you think it's something like that?
No, well, I think that there's a difference between transgender and crossdresser. A crossdresser is somebody who wears the opposite clothing, and it could be for a multitude of reasons. And some of them don't have to do with sex at all. A lot of crossdressers will wear granny gowns to bed at night, and that's all they'll wear.
Or to just putter around the house. It can have nothing to do with sex. I mean,
yeah,
it's a variety.
But the majority of crossdressers do have, there is a sexual component to it. Absolutely.
So do you think cross-dressers is there any homophobia in there, or are they embracing because choice of the opposite sex's clothing, it has to mean something, otherwise you'd put on a dog's collar.
Right. Well, I agree with you, but one of the things that we need to establish here is that there's a difference between transgender and a crossdresser. Somebody who is transgender would be, for example,
trapped in the body of the opposite sex.
A man trapped, feeling like he's trapped in a woman's body. I mean, a man's body, but he's really a woman. That's transgender. Transgender. That's transgender. When they feel that they are trapped in the opposite opposite body. Whereas a crossdresser, the definition of a crossdresser is basically just someone, could be a man or woman, that's dressing in the opposite clothing. Not
traditionally associated with the opposite gender. There's no sexual, transgender, homosexual motives involved.
Right.
It's not a given. So there's just sometimes when you try to look for the answers, all it does is reveal more and more questions.
So obviously, Dee, you've had one-on-one, hands-on, if you will, experience with this. So your husband, well, you're right, rightfully so, I suppose.
Yes.
So how long were you in the relationship, and what happened where he got busted? Like, how does this work? Because other people watching right now are going to relate to this. Even if it's not cross-dressing, there are similar closet things that go on that are big deals.
You're absolutely right. am a social scientist with a feminist academic background, and no one was more blown away discovering that her husband was a crossdresser than me. I knew that something was wrong with him, with the marriage. Of course, I thought that he was having an affair. He also had problems with drugs. So there were reasons for me to suspect that something was wrong, but certainly you don't ever, as a wife, you don't go to start to think, oh my God, my husband's a crossdresser. You don't hit that.
No mother pulls her daughter aside before she's going to walk down the aisle and says, "Sweetie," and just in case this event transpires. So there's no warning.
No warning.
You never met my mother.
Well, my mother did not warn me. And what happened, I was in the relationship. I had a 20-year marriage. I was very much in love with my ex-husband. I found out 10 years into the marriage, he decided to surprise me. And the way in which he told me was on a New Year's Eve. He said he had something to tell me, didn't know how, that he had to go upstairs and he'd be back.
It was a romantic setting. They had a feast for two before the fire on the floor. It was just the two of them. Everything was perfect. She spent all day getting ready for this moment without realizing it.
Right. And he said he needed to go upstairs and come and show me something. So I sat very pensively for, it seemed like hours, but it was probably only 10 minutes. He came down the stairs wearing a long, otherwise unassuming silk robe, came, sat next to me, opened up the robe, and I had the shock of my life.
Fireworks.
The shock of my life. I can't begin to tell you. I looked at him and I realized he was serious, which was very concerning at that point. I didn't know what was going on. He then explained to me that this was something that he had fantasized about for such a long time and really wanted to try it. I, at the time, I had very little knowledge of cross-dressers, despite my degrees in women's studies and in social sciences and masters. I still had little knowledge of what was really happening in front of me with my own life. And the bottom line is, it wasn't just a one-time thing. Cross-dressing is a lifelong condition. It normally starts at the ages of 7, 8, or 9. If they are not doing it then, they are thinking about it. They are having the fantasies by then.
But she didn't know any of that
I
at the
had no
time.
idea.
She thought it was something that had just occurred to him in his 40s. And maybe if she had been slimmer or sexier or more of a woman,
there you go.
It was like her fault.
I felt
hit the bullseye. You hit the bullseye there, because how is a woman not going to think that she is missing something or is overdoing something else?
Exactly. I, along with the thousands, actually probably millions, because our website, crossdresserswives.com, receives over 2.5 million hits a year. So you really have to understand that this issue is so, it's rampant. And people don't know, because cross-dressers' wives, in general, they don't tell. I knew for 10 years. I never told anyone.
Not even her personal therapist.
Not even my therapist. I lied to my therapist. I lied to everybody. I was so ashamed. I was so embarrassed. I felt I was so humiliated. I had no idea. No one ever said to me, oh, my husband's a cross-dresser, what do I do? Yeah, my girlfriends are saying, oh, my husband's having an affair, or whatever, or my husband's gay, any of those things, but I never heard anybody say, my husband's a cross-dresser. So when it happened to me, I went looking for help. Finally, my best friend, she knew something was wrong and encouraged me to tell her.
No, you didn't go looking for help until 3 years after your divorce.
It took a long time. It took a long time.
I mean, how carrying a secret can just compound the issue. It never allows any sort of fresh information or healing to come into play. So if you're not allowed to talk about something that's going on, when do you ever hope to achieve any sort of enlightenment and move forward? It just gets worse and worse, festering in a dark closet, for lack of a better cliche.
And then he pulls. Many cross-dressers will pull the wives into their secret lives. And the wives don't get out. They don't get out. They don't talk about it. They don't share with other people. They just live with it.
Well, if you're in love with your partner, you don't want to do something to hurt him. You don't want to expose him.
But you also don't want to be doing things that you don't want to be doing.
Right. So
Like a lot of women absolutely do not want to engage in sexual activities with their husbands when their husbands are dressed up in lingerie. That is not what they signed up for. And when a undisclosed crossdresser marries and walks you down the aisle, he is misrepresenting himself and he's misrepresenting the marriage. He's not giving the crossdresser's wife a choice. I was never given a choice. Do I want to be a crossdresser's wife? And if I did at that point, then perhaps I would have had the ability at the time to set boundaries with my ex-husband.
And her family could still be intact today.
Exactly.
One of the things that really rung my bell as a writer about her story and many of the other stories is that these couples really love each other. And yet there's something about an intrinsic part of him and the way he chose to deal with it and her fears and her shames that she brings to the table and from her past that just makes it not work out. It's a really tragic situation, and it doesn't have to be that way if more honesty can come forward up front.
All right, let's go to the phones and say hi to Frank, who's also in California. Frank, you're on the Smart Show. Welcome.
Hi, thank you.
Hey there.
This is a fascinating subject. I'm so glad I came across it. I'm wondering, when you go into a marriage with anyone, you learn things about them later. Yes, this is a major thing that you've learned about them. But what was it that made you not be able to just accept this? In the end, it was just the same guy under different clothing. I mean, was it something that during the sex it didn't feel right, or can you explain why? Because we accept things in partners we don't know about at all when we get into the relationship.
Absolutely,
it's a great point.
To find these things out.
Thank you so much, Frank. That's a great question, and the answer is very simple. The lies, the deceit, and the betrayal for years. I went a decade. Every day. He was lying to me. Every single day. And even once after I found out, he continued to lie. And that's what most crossdressers' wives, they're more upset about the lies and the deceit and the betrayal than they are about the so-called clothes.
So it sounds like there's a huge shame element with the husband. Like he gets that it's not that it's just bad enough as it is, but it's sort of humiliating at the same time. Yet he's drawn to it, doesn't want to tell you. Again, I'm kind of curious, and let's ask Frank, who's just called in. What's your assessment, Frank, as to the real payoff of a straight man putting on women's clothes? There has to be some deep hunger that's fed, but what is that hunger, do you think?
Well, it's interesting because it was mentioned that one of them mentioned that it's stress relief, and I guess that makes sense to an extent. But when it moves into the bedroom, then there's something else going on completely, and it's it sounds like there's not very much research or that the experts are right here on the radio show, but it sounds like it's still a fairly unanswered question.
You are so right about that.
Except for the experts are actually the women that wrote their stories. We just help facilitate them reaching the public. The brave women that step forward to share their stories off the forum on the website. It's an incredible space, the forum on the website, where these women, they share the emotional tunnels that they've dug in order to survive, in order to help other women in their situations because they have no one to talk to about. It'd just be like anyone in the closet finding a place that's an oasis where they can feel safe enough to actually talk about their feelings. So that's what is so wonderful about what Dee has created and started. It's not about exposing or bashing or venting. It's about helping each other figure out and understand this situation.
Frank, we're going to give you a copy of this book, so I'd like you simply to send us a text at our Harrison hotline numbers, 310-737-TALK, 310-737-TALK. Send us a text with your name, your physical street address, and the name of the book, which is called The Crossdresser's Wife, Our Secret Lives, and we'll be very happy to ship one off to you, okay?
Wow, that's really cool. This is fascinating. I will continue to watch. Thank you very much.
All right, my friend, have a great day. Thanks, Frank. That is our number, is 310-737-TALK. We are talking to Dee Levy. Do you pronounce it Levy or Levy?
Levy.
Dee Levy and Brian Hunt, they are the authors of the book, The Crossdresser's Wife, Our Secret Lives. There is also a nonprofit website called crossdresserswives.com, in which they explore this, and there are plenty of people witnessing, and I think that's probably the best part of the book. It's not just a single perspective, but it's many different stories, all of which are interconnected with a fun matrix, that being pain and agony, deceit and treachery. And in any relationship, lack of transparency is the ultimate poison. I'm wondering, we take Billy, who's in the red shirt there, who sleeps with his iPads. I wonder if there's... I'm just kidding, honey. Just kidding.
No, he's not kidding. He's not kidding.
But his partner knows. And I guess that's really the key thing. Is if your partner is in agreement with whatever it is, it's okay.
Exactly.
It's when they don't get the chance, and I think this is what you've said, Dee Levy, when they don't get the chance to co-sign the behavior, that's when you've got an issue.
Exactly.
You really hit it right. That's right on the head, Harrison.
You really did hit it. You hit it.
That's all.
Some wives, actually like it. And that's great. When you have two consenting adults, wonderful.
Yeah, there's no drama there. It's boring.
Yeah, but when you have somebody that just comes out of nowhere that you've been married to for 10, 20, 30, 40 years, who just decides to put on, lingerie, you've got a problem in your relationship.
Now, Dee, does he use your lingerie or does he buy his own?
He would buy lingerie for me all the time, and he always bought it so it would thank God I'm kind of on the small side, but he would buy it so it would expand, so he could buy things that he could tie up, things like that. And so I had plenty of lingerie I never wanted, but he insisted I needed, and then years later I found out why I needed it, because he was wearing it the whole time. I just didn't know.
And Brian, as a gay man, you've certainly seen countless drag, as have I. And we have, drag impersonators. We have actual real drag queens. We have trannies, the whole soup, cat, and pizzas on that. How did you feel compelled to get involved in this story, in that it's something with which you have real life experience, but it really is so different because you're talking about straight guys and they're not doing drag.
It's totally different, yes. I've spent a lot of time in clubs, and I've talked since the inception of this project. It's been about 3 years. I always take an opportunity to speak with anyone who comes across my path that might have some knowledge that they can shed, and the motivations are just like apples and oranges. Like a gay drag queen, most of the ones that I have spoken with and have opened up to me, they do it for creative expression. It has nothing to do with intrinsically who they are or what they do at home or how they choose to have sex with their partner. Whereas the cross-dressing men, they are not as forthright with the information that they've been willing to share, perhaps because they don't quite understand it as well as they'd like to, which is really tragic, I think, because if anyone's walking around with question marks and and there's so much unknown, it makes things so much worse than they need to be. It's like just a little understanding can exponentially change your attitude and how you feel about life. So, like you said, we really want this to be able to open up this issue and allow people to feel more comfortable with themselves so that honesty can prevail.
Dee, quick question. Your husband, is this... Ex-husband, your ex, thank you. We'll make that abundantly clear, shall we? Did he have a club of like-minded friends with whom he shared this secret obsession? Or was he literally doing this in isolation?
Isolation.
Nobody knew.
Isolation. From what I know. And you have to understand, at this point I look back and I can't trust anything that he ever said to me. I look back and wonder what was real, what wasn't. But from what I know, I'm just making an educated guess, and I'm saying he did it in isolation. He also traveled to Thailand multiple times a year. Now, I didn't travel with him. So when I would question him, when he'd come home, he would always insist that he never, ever went to any one of those places that Thailand is well noted for.
You mean the ping pong ball emporium?
Right.
I've seen that.
Yeah,
I've
he's
even
never.
seen
Yeah,
the
he
banana.
said. Yeah, he never went to any of those. So the fact is, I will never know, and I have to accept that. But my gut is that he did it in isolation.
Did your ex-husband remarry? Has he taken another woman hostage?
He does have a girlfriend. A couple of women. We've been. I left him. Let's see. It was October. I left him 2 days before our 20th wedding anniversary, which is about. It'll be, I think, 7 years or so. Neither one of us have remarried. I have been involved in 2 wonderful, serious relationships since then. But I've chosen to remain single. But I know he is with somebody that how do I say this?
Just they're unusual. Anyway, so
understood the smart restraint of pen and tongue on that one. What about your ex-husband's mother? Does she know about her son's peccadillos?
I think she was the first one to know. I really do. There's always been a joke in his family that out of all the kids, there were 4 of them. The only one that was ever brought to a psychiatrist was my ex-husband. He was brought at 7 years old, and the family always said that they took him to talk about sex. My gut is that most likely, like most cross-dressers, he started. And when he did tell me that the first piece of female clothing that he ever put on was his mother's. I have every reason to believe that his mother knew when he was a young child. And unfortunately, I have been told, I have never shared it with anyone, with his family, with his friends. I have been asked. I have never disclosed it. I'm using a non-de plume. I have no desire to out him, to hurt him.
Right.
We have a child together. I'm also protecting my child.
Now, your child is aware or unaware of this whole thing?
My child,
aware because you've got your book and all that. But
right.
With the nom de plume and such, has this created a firewall so that the child is unaware of the father's behavior, or does your child have a concept of this?
Well, my child is now 26 years old. I was not the one to tell our child.
Yeah.
My ex did, but he did it in such a way that my child knew he was lying. He said he admitted to being a sex addict. He admitted to being addicted to pornography, and he admitted to wearing women's lingerie one night and told our child that I liked it so much that he continued to do it. But
That's what it was.
Exactly. You. Of course. So the bottom line is, when our child confronted me and asked, was any of this true? I then proceeded to tell the truth.
Wow. And how does the child take it? Because it's a parent now. It's not a lover. It's a parent. So it's got to be doubly confusing in some way. And I think a child is more disposed to be forgiving because it's your parent.
Yes. My child was extremely upset. At first, our child just felt like, the father was I hate to say this word, but that's the word that our child used, was that he was a freak. Now, our child feels quite differently, and unfortunately blames me for not leaving sooner. Our child feels that the moment that my ex-husband put on that lingerie, I should have thrown him out of the house.
Well, I would suggest, and I am just a civilian here, but there's no manual on this. There's no instruction book. There's no roadmap. You did the best you could with what you were handed, and what you were handed is top secret stuff. It's not in the public dialogue. It's nothing that anyone wants to talk about or has any real life experience. And you, having created crossdresserswives.com, the nonprofit website and organization, this is probably going to be people's first and only introduction to this, offering some solutions to something that's still highly mysterious and so taboo that, you know, you're using a nom de plume.
Of course. I don't want to hurt anybody. That's not the point.
And it takes the focus off the real issue.
Exactly.
It's not about who did what. It's more about how this issue can affect families and relationships, people that are living right next door to you today. And it doesn't have to be that hard.
Right.
It can be a lot easier. So we're hoping to, just shed light on this shadowy issue.
And the fact that there are 8.5 million known cross-dressers in the United States, and then you look at the divorce rate. And first of all, I think that as a social scientist, I would argue strongly with that number. I think it's so underrated. But then you have to look at the divorce rate in this country. And you have to realize there are more cross-dressers' wives out there than there are cross-dressers. And what happens to these wives? So many of them end up with post-traumatic stress disorder. They don't tell anybody. They hold it in. They self-medicate. They start drinking. Many of them become suicidal. I've read studies where 10% of all women in psychiatric wards were cross-dressers' wives. These things upset me so much as a woman and as a humanitarian, that we really need to have an outreach program to help these women, to find them and to help them.
Which is what the book is about.
Exactly. That was the bottom line purpose of the book.
Give these stories a platform, and not only are there stories in the book, but there's springs of powerful posts from the forum in between each story that sort of underscore a theme in the story that they're about to read. But they were carefully chosen, like for 7 years worth of posts, thousands and thousands, just to give you an idea of the camaraderie and the companionship and the support that the women provide and the answers they reach. It's really an incredibly moving experience to read these forum entries, the raw emotion that is like tilled there every single day. I mean, you don't need car chases, guns, alien, coming in. I mean, it's all here.
I do need alien and science fiction. But other than that, I totally get it. Life. Let's turn it over and to Yvonne, who is a straight woman, to the best of my understanding. And what's your sense on this? You've heard of this before, but have you actually had this kind of close contact to it? It's so far removed from our public dialogue.
I've known men who cross-dress. Yes. But they were friends. They were just, it wasn't anything where someone was lying to me. A very different experience.
Were they straight men or gay men?
They were straight men. I don't think I've ever met a gay cross-dresser. I mean, yes. I because to me that's a different word.
That's drag.
Than drag.
So it seems like disclosure is the key thing, and I think we've determined, Dee Levy, that that's probably not going to be the mainstream thing, because there is, in our wonderfully hungover Protestant, puritanical, Calvinistic country with our Newt Rich and his shriveled organ and all, and the Rick Santorum.
And Sarah Palin, don't forget her.
Sarah Palin with her illegitimate, it's so shameful. So it's impossible to imagine, like, for every action there seems to be an equal and opposing reaction. Do you find, Dee, as we wrap this up, that this is as widespread in Europe, where people have a much greater fluidity with their sexuality?
Yes. Yes, I think it's much more widely spread, especially in England. Big time. We have...
Back to repression, right?
No, well, we have anecdotal evidence
Victorians.
that it's definitely it's very prominent in England. Cross-dressing is very prominent in England, and cross-dressers' wives they make up half of our form. They're coming. From
It's
England.
interesting. If you go to England, like Brian, have you been to London, Brian?
Brian.
No, I've never been, unfortunately. I'm dying to go. Take me.
I've been.
If-
We're going to go.
If
We will go.
Brian were to go and were to go to gay bars there, he would find an overabundance of the leather flavor. And that, again, speaks, I think, to a certain kind of repression because it's slightly hostile. I mean, it really is about pinching and clawing and a kind of
They're
drag.
overcompensating.
Yeah. And that is the culture from which our culture ultimately sprang. But I'm thinking places like, and Germany's the same thing. Hell, they went through decades of high repression. But if you go to France and other places like that, where it's a much more open sexual, or the Czech Republic, do you see cross-dressing as abundant there, or is it leaner there, where the sexual mores are much more relaxed?
I think all of Europe has that their sexual mores are much more relaxed than the United States. Why are we, number one in unplanned pregnancies, for a developed nation? There's something wrong here.
Well, it's 2012. We should be talking about contraception as if it's the Middle Ages.
Exactly.
We were actually at a dinner party just the other night, thrown in the honor of the book, and everyone there cross-dressed.
Oh, hold it up again.
Yes.
Everyone cross-dressed at the party, and it really, the people that were there from Europe, except for Dee, seemed to really have a harder time understanding what the big issue was. They were like, it's just clothes. I don't really get it, because they come from a more relaxed social, moral system. I don't know how else to say it, but
yeah, for them it would be drag because they could do it or not do it. But for us, it's a hidden medicinal coping, whatever all this other shadow stuff going on. For them, it would just be a fun night on Halloween.
it seems to really strike a deep chord in people, like a resonating discomfort sometimes, and it probably has more to do with the individual, what they're bringing, their thoughts and emotions, but it's really different. It's shocking. I mean, you just can't get past it. If you actually put yourself in a situation, I don't believe that you can really anticipate what it is your emotions are going to surprise you with. It's really shocking. Working on those stories, sometimes it was so hard I was actually repelled from my computer because I couldn't relate, and it would take weeks for me to try to really get to understand where the women were coming from or where the men were coming from. We tried to keep it, right on the sort of the neutral line to let people make up their own decisions and just repeat the facts and say what happened. So, I don't know.
Well, I'm glad you guys did this, and we've run out of time, but I'm really grateful that you came on here and visited us here on Harrison's Hangout, part of the smartshow.org, part of our KPFK 90.7 Pacifica Radio Network, and we're really glad you did this. We probably will have you on again soon on a second radio hour, which will be a much more different format, a little more formal, because we can't say words like nipple and clitoris in that format, because Yvonne, who's in the little box there, would just beat the hell out of us.
We don't want to upset Yvonne.
She is the censors. That's right. Your website is crossdresserswives.com, plural, crossdresserswives.com. And the next three people that text their name, their physical street address, and all of that to our Harrison hotlines at 310-737-TALK, 310-737-TALK, which you see on your screen. We'll make sure to give you a book of this. Thank you both so much for coming on. Really, how enlightening. What a taboo topic. And I feel much more informed and involved than really being an armchair guy who hears of this assuming that it's drag, but now we know it is a drag.
Thank you.
Thank you
Harrison,
so
much.
Thank you. And happy Valentine's Day to you and your listeners.
And to Yvonne and to the caller.
Yvonne, thank you so much.
I'm going to go kiss my spaniel.